Hello and welcome to my channel. This is Adi. Today I'm privileged to be joined by Commander Sandeep Dhawan, who, apart from being a naval aviator, has a keen eye on the happenings, especially concerning India. Strategically, militarily, he writes quite a bit on various different issues on his blog. He is very active on social media and he's been interacting with a lot of people about the India-China and various other issues which are happening here. Thank you, sir, for joining me and giving me this opportunity to, take some insight from you on the situation around us.
Hello, Adi. Good evening, and it's wonderful to see you also. I've been watching your channel, and it was a pleasure to see the kind of hard work you put in, and some of the videos were amazing, and the storytelling style of yours was really going deep into people's heart. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for those words. So I'll start with a very broad question. In the global world order, which is changing today post-COVID and various other things, where does the Indian Navy stand as far as the maritime domain is concerned in the world?
Okay, that's a very pertinent question. Indian Navy is, you can say, call it the king of Indian Ocean region. Okay, despite the fact that we are 6th or 7th, at least varying 6th or 7th biggest navy in the world, number of ships wise as well as the tonnage wise. Okay, just to make a difference, how it goes, like US tonnage wise is the number 1 navy. However, number of ships wise, China has just sometime back surpassed them. So Indian Navy today stands at a threshold where we're going to take a grand leap forward, and every navy around the world, every navy what's its salt around the world is looking up to Indian Navy, because it is our unique location and position in Indian Ocean which makes us so important. It is not South China Sea, it is not Pacific anymore. So it is the Indian Ocean, and it is Indian Ocean which is the future. Everybody is aware that almost 65% of China's energy needs are met through Indian Ocean, and 80% of their trade goes through Indian Ocean. Also, we have 2 choke points. Okay, Arabian Sea, and which has got Hormuz, which is called Hormuz dilemma for China, and also below the Andaman Sea, we have again another choke point. So these choke points once again make Indian Navy very important, because we have number of platforms which can be positioned there and which can really trouble China. China, despite having more than 350 ships, warships, they can hardly spare not even 10% of that because of their occupation in South China Sea. The Indian coast, that's over 7,000 kilometers long Indian coast, but so is China. China's coastline is 15,000 kilometer long. China's sea border, land border is much lesser, it's 22,000 kilometers. That means their dependence on their navy has increased. They are surrounded by very powerful navies like Japanese Navy or Korean Navy and Vietnam Navy. So they don't have many options, whereas India is not surrounded by strong navies. So we rule the roost in Indian Ocean. We have the wherewithal in Indian Ocean, and that is why we have become such important piece of this jigsaw puzzle.
That's very interesting. So, I mean, one of the points that you mentioned in this reply is that the Chinese would not be able to bring in the amount of force which would be required to, let's say, counter India in times of a conflict. Do you think we are ready, even if China does able to manage to bring about a larger force? Are we ready to counter the Chinese in the oceans, in the 2 choke points, as you mentioned, and various other regions which are strategically important?
Yeah, so if they come to Indian Ocean, we are certainly much better off than Chinese. They just cannot afford to bring the kind of force which is required to overcome Indian resistance. Okay, so there are two ways: either we go offensive with China or we go defensive. Moment we are defensive, okay, we have our coastal batteries, we have our air force, we have all other elements of our forces, whereas China will have to depend purely on their naval force. So they will not have much of chance when they come to Indian Ocean and come in an offensive form. Defensively, we are very well within our right to defend our country and do it very well. However, offensive when we go, Indian Ocean is huge, it's large. Finding Chinese ships or Navy submarines will be difficult. However, as you know that we are part of Quad. So Quad navies are also part of, and we have done a lot of exercises with them. And that will again come very handy. The Chinese Navy will only challenge us when they see the right moment and they want to take on maybe Taiwan, they want to attack Taiwan, or they want to do something much more than what they are already doing. Otherwise, Chinese Navy, the plan which is called, will not have any chance in Indian Ocean.
That I think would be quite a reassurance to a lot of Indians who are worried about the factor. So one thing we must, I mean, it begs my understanding, and this is something which is just a small thought. Both our neighbors concentrate on the northern part of the country. Is there a concerted effort to keep us out of the ocean?
See, the northern part of the country we are occupied because our land border is much larger, and India as such, if you see go into the history, other than the Cholas, nobody has ventured out. Okay, Cholas had some amazing and big navy which ruled the roost in Southeast Asia. Other than that, India has been never been a maritime superpower of its time. Okay, we had amazing shipbuilding powers till say 11th century or so. Thereafter, that also declined. But we have never gone out. If you wouldn't have heard of any Indian expedition which has gone out and attacked, Africa, or which has gone out and attacked the Middle East, or other than the Southeast Asia where we ruled till Cholas rule. So that is how Indian Navy stands. So that is why, because of land border is much larger compared to the sea border, where we have been engaging the enemy at mostly on our northern border. That is the way it is stand. If you also notice, despite all this, Indian Navy has taken on Pakistan Navy in 71 war very well. They are still ashamed of what we did to Karachi Harbour and what we did to their Karachi naval base. Despite the fact some of their ships were much better off than our ships. That goes because of our training. Our Indian Navy's training and Indian Armed Forces training is par excellence. And in fact, in this aspect, even Chinese Navy and Chinese Armed Forces, the training is not that good. In fact, China has not fought any war after 79, which was where they came, a distant second. So all their capabilities, everything is on paper, whether it is the ships, and it is just not the ship, it is the equipment which is fitted inside the ship. Have they tried it out in a war, or have they tried it out in real actual scenario? No. That is why you must be seeing the flurry of exercises being carried out by China in South China Sea. Presently also, a 1 month long exercise is being undertaken in the South China Sea. So that is the reason Indian Navy and Indian Armed Forces, because of the training and the background, we are much better off than China or Pakistan in this regard.
Very interesting, sir. Looking a little bit towards the west, which is the Eastern African Horn, which is of course a very disturbed region, and our trade with the Western Asian countries, especially for oil. increasing role will the Indian Navy play in the future, increasing our dominance in that area?
If you've seen of late, our relationship with all the Middle East countries has improved drastically. Be it Saudi Arabia, be it UAE, and Oman, of course, has been a very, very good friend of ours.
Mm-hmm.
Other than Iran, okay, of late, our relationship is not that good, but I'm very, very sure that our relationship will again flourish. And we have a history of 4,000 years of friendship with Iran. So that's not a small thing to say. India also depends on most of its energy requirement on Middle East, as well as we get over $50 billion of remittance coming from Middle East. Okay, so a lot of Indians are working in Middle East, and they are some of the finest workers there, and they're not just the taxi drivers or mechanics, but they're into the IT industry. They are in good positions there. So that is one again thing which is keeping the Middle East looking up to India. We are also supplying them pharmaceuticals, UAE, and the other countries. Oman has been very nice. We have been positioning our ships there. Our ships have been going there for R&R. Iran has been little reluctant of late for our ships to berth there and do R&R. However, I'm sure they will also come around.
So one of the things that I think defense sector is talking about most is Atmanirbharta. There are loads of things which are happening around. There's a second aircraft carrier coming up. There are submarines being launched every second, third month. New frigates are coming out. What do you think how would you rate this entire effort? And what do you see as the challenges for the Indian Navy in the coming time, looking at the factor that we want to self-develop?
That's a very, very important question. And I can assure you that India is heading in the right direction. We have wasted a lot of time. There is no doubt in that. We have been getting our ships and aircraft and other equipment from other countries. But if you have to be a great nation, you cannot depend on others. You have to depend on your own industry. If you notice, the collapse of USSR was because their industry ran out of capacity. Okay, whereas India has a very, very strong, solid industrial base. Today, as far as Indian Navy is concerned, 90% of the float component, that means the hull of a ship, is indigenous. Okay, 65% of the propulsion component, okay, that is indigenous, and 45% of the weapon and sensors are indigenous. So that is a huge progress we have done. We have 46 ships and submarine under construction within India. I would like to add one thing here is that we have to get going with our speed. Okay, our speed is slow. What we take about 9 years to build a ship, China builds that ship in 3 years. That is the only place we are lacking. Okay, when we started one aircraft carrier that is still not been produced. In that period, they produced 2 aircraft carriers. Okay, and third one is also on the way. So the only thing which is lacking is the speed, and I'm sure with expertise and the kind of work we are doing and involving the big industries of India, those things will also overcome.
So the private sector is important. Is that your opinion?
It's amazingly important, and L&T and Mahindras and many other big corporate houses, they are getting involved, and I'm sure in times to come, in next 5 years, it's going to be a golden period for India.
So during this recent standoff with the Chinese, one of the least spoken things about the Indian Armed Forces was the role that the Indian Navy played. We all are aware what the Indian Navy did even during the Kargil conflict. We had blockaded the Pakistani coastline completely. But these are stories that are not out in the open. I'd like to ask you, what was the role of the Indian Navy during this whole conflict, during this whole standoff with China? And have we done well?
So Indian Navy was obviously not in the offensive mode. We are both the fleets, Eastern and Western Fleet. They were out at sea. The main requirement for Indian Navy was to guard our sea lines of communication. Okay, they're called SLOCs, where our main trade passes through. That is the only requirement of Indian Navy at that time, and it was met perfectly. We were at high alert. We had some deployments, but I am not at liberty to tell you about those deployments. However, I can just assure you that if balloon had gone up, Indian Navy was 100% ready, and we would have choked China in many, many areas which they were not thinking about.
I think most of the people would just want to know and be reassured with the fact that we have enough capability to push back, because we don't have any territorial ambitions with China. So we should have the capability of at least pushing back.
Absolutely.
Trouble for the Chinese if they, try and trouble us again.
That's right.
Looking at the Quad, which is more or less a naval grouping right now. It's a grouping of 4 countries. It's not yet been termed as an alliance. Is it high time for us to literally move forward into a leadership role in this grouping?
If you have noticed, for quite some time, nobody was talking about Quad. But of late, in last 2 to 3 years' time, Quad has actually taken off, and that is because India was a slightly reluctant partner of Quad. However, the present government, which has given impetus to this kind of partnership, which it has given, India has come to the lead. And presently, I would say the whole Quad is revolving around India. Okay, the kind of responsibility now India shares with Quad. Presently, as you said, why only naval component was there? Because if the army gets involved in Quad, it will be very, very alarming for our neighbors. That is why Navy is presently exercising, and independently we are exercising a lot with US Army. We are exercising with other air forces, but the Quad per se is just being limited as of now to the Indian Navy and other navies. We are working on a lot of concepts, and that will be very interesting for us, and as well as the Indian Navy's importance will be shown in that. There's something called mosaic warfare. Okay, so if you have ever seen a mosaic, it has got tiles.
Yes.
Okay, and so what we are working on is that if you have a tile which is to be replaced, you put another tile in place of that tile. Whereas the olden concept was a jigsaw kind of puzzle. If one piece of the puzzle is missing, only that piece can fit in there. However, in this context, if a tile is missing, another tile can straight away fit into that without any problem. So that is called mosaic warfare. That means, in simple terms, you make simple platforms. Okay, you make simple platforms. It has to be a combination of unmanned and manned platforms. And you go in formation and you replace any of the platforms which are, let's say, unmanned vehicle, which is, let's say, a vessel or underwater or air has gone out, you replace with other one. So that is called a concept, the mosaic warfare. Another aspect what India as an emerging power has to keep in mind is offset strategies. Okay, if you have noticed, the first offset strategy it was introduced by USA when USSR was coming at par with the USA. That was the time the nuclear weapon was devised. That was called first offset strategy. When USSR developed nuclear weapons, USA came out with stealth and standoff weapons and those kind of things. That is called a second offset strategy. Now we got into third offset strategy, that is artificial intelligence and various other aspects in this context. If India has to stay ahead, we should start thinking of the fourth offset strategy. That means we have to stay ahead of our competition. We have to stay ahead of China. which is our immediate neighbor, as well as which is challenging us.
So you mentioned this fourth aspect. What would this be, in your opinion?
It's all technological aspect. If you see, notice the nuclear weapon, followed by the standoff weapons, as well as the stealth capabilities. Then came the artificial intelligence and data mining and machine learning. All these things are being implemented in the military, okay, as well as network-centric warfare. We have been talking about network-centric warfare. Now India has to start moving towards decision-centric warfare. Okay, in a while now, network-centric warfare also will be obsolete, because network-centric warfare will make the information overload for the central command. What is network-centric warfare? Is that every information is coming to the central command and they are deciding. Whereas now with the artificial intelligence and machine learning, we have C2, okay, the command and communication, the human command and machine communication, as well as human command and machine control. So these are various aspects and various concepts which are coming in, and India has to work on these. Indian Armed Forces, Indian Navy has to start working on these so that we stay ahead of our competition. Because if you notice, China is catching up. China is catching up. Now, despite having the largest number of artificial intelligence workforce India has got in the world, the R&D is very limited, okay? Whereas China and especially Switzerland, Sweden, they are very ahead, very, very much ahead in the R&D part of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So India has to start doing R&D, because now we cannot separate. It is not just the militaristic aspect where you're going to beat the enemy. It is the technological aspect, it is the technical aspect, it is the wealth, and it is manufacturing based. It is the areas are vast and big.
So Chinese talk about this string of pearls surrounding India. And they have obviously done quite a bit of work ensuring that that string of pearls is very strong, with the base in Pakistan, with the base in Sri Lanka, and so on and so forth. And currently looking at the situation in Myanmar, you can also see some sort of Chinese involvement because of its access to the sea. What do you think that the Indian Navy should do to make sure that Chinese, especially in considering Sri Lanka, which is very, very close to the Indian mainland and can be a huge threat, what do you think that the Navy should do to ensure that this threat is nullified and the pressure is put back on the Chinese?
Yes, this concept is an American concept devised by an American company, the String of Pearls. China has done a lot of work. There is no doubt in that. They have invested a lot of money, and they have pumped in a lot of money in our neighborhood, especially Pakistan as well as Sri Lanka. But if you notice, the geopolitics is a changing vista. It is not a stationary thing. If you notice that Sri Lanka has played a very, very smart game, they take benefit from China, then they swing in the direction of India, and they take benefit from India, then again swing back towards China, and henceforth it goes on. Similarly, if you noticed, Nepal, barring Pakistan, which has been steadily been with China, all these countries have been going one step forward and two steps backwards. Moment Indian ministers and forces reach these countries, visit these countries, they start talking about that our friendship is better than any other country. So as of today, it is not making much of difference. We are making inroads. We are having our own coordination with USA, with France, and we are utilizing their bases as well as Mauritius. We have started some bases there. I will not go into details much. So we are doing our due diligence, and so it's not that we have got surrounded by them. And China is in no position to utilize these bases against us. As I told you, as of today, they don't have the enough platforms to spare to start utilizing all these bases. However, having said that, done, it does not mean that we become happy about it, that China is not going to do anything. We have to be up and about the whole scenario. We have to keep working towards containing China policy. We have to be a key part of it. India is the key to China for the Quad as well as rest of the world.
Mm.
Another aspect I want to add to this is that which has been ignored by the West as well as USA. I have written extensively about this. Is that we should have involved Russia. If India's key to the China problem, Russia is that metal which will make that key. We should involve. Russia could not join NATO because of various issues in Europe. However, the Quad Plus should have Russia part of Quad Plus. I'm not very sure, but looking at the signs of what USA was doing with the when President Trump was there, was that if you notice that they were involving Russia more and more. They were bending towards Russia to get them, into their fold. That policy has to continue so that we have Russia in our fold. Moment Russia moves towards the Quad and we have a bigger organization called Quad Plus or whatever we call it, we will see that China will have no say at all. Because of Russia and their strategic understanding with China, as of today, it is a tough call.
Mm.
We have to remind Russia that the Far East will be taken away by China. It is already having million plus Chinese living there, whereas the number of Russians is dwindling there. So in no time, China will take over that territory. We have to keep reminding Russia the danger to their territory that China poses. So it is very, very important. Then you'll see all this theory of string of pearls and everything will fall flat. Presently, China is working towards the string of pearls theory to secure their sea lines of communication, secure their trade, so that tomorrow nobody threatens them. However, they will not be able to utilize those bases for offensive use or for militaristic use.
I must say that's a very interesting, observation you've made about Russia, and this is something which is not spoken about very often. The factor that the Chinese would obviously want to inch forward is nothing new. So, but one thing that the Chinese always are pretty smart in is actually preempting, and the world has seen this very often, that they are able to actually preempt all these moves and actually create a boundary for themselves. No matter how much pressure that they have been put across, there's a second aircraft carrier from the United States which is floating around. India is putting whatever pressure, Japan is putting. The Chinese have always found a way out, especially in the South China Sea area. How do you see the situation evolving in the next 1 or 2 years? Do you see that place heating up a bit, or is it just going to remain posturing?
The things will heat up. Have no doubt about it. A lot of people have spoken about, and I've also written about it, the Thucydides' trap, which is rising power and already established power. Okay, they will collide sometime or other. Having said that, remember that centuries are defined by events, and decades are defined by the personalities. Xi Jinping, he came in 2012. It is already 2021. So his decade is about to come to an end. That is the reason, if you see the purges which are going on in China, in the name of cleansing and the corrupt officials and corrupt ministers. But that's not just the corruption. It is bringing your faithfuls into the fold. So Xi Jinping, he is surrounding himself with his own faithfuls. He is keeping military continuously involved and occupied. Leaders are not scared of any uprising from public. The Chinese public is very happy with their mobile phone, their newfound wealth, and their Gucci bags. Xi Jinping and the administration, what they're scared of is the coup. And who will do the coup? It is the military which will do the coup. It is the armed forces, the PLA, Plan, and PLAF. They will do the coup. That is why he will keep them busy all throughout. Now, while you're keeping them busy, a war can start from a small spark, okay? One mistake here or one mistake there. Let's say tomorrow they cross a line over Taiwan and Taiwan shoots down one Chinese plane. What will be next step? Second thing is the Chinese growth rate is coming down. It is much better than many other countries, but they will not be able to retain that growth rate. So to cover that up, China and as well as the leadership and CCP, they have to create situations which keeps their public's attention diverted. If you notice, moment the Chinese forces or plan, they talked about their withdrawing from the Ladakh and other heights and Pangong Lake. Within no time, moment the hue and cry was there on their social media, within no time, they declared that 4 soldiers were martyred in Ladakh, the Chinese soldiers. The Chinese attention was immediately diverted. Why they were hiding for so many months? It's been almost 8-9 months. They've been hiding those names. Why now? That is the way China works. They will always keep their public occupied. They will always keep their forces occupied. And third thing is they have moved. In 2016, they moved to the theater commands. The theater commands, it was a mistake of the free world that we have not taken on China at that time. They were not prepared at all. They were underprepared. They were in a very, very precarious situation, because when you move into a new kind of formation, when you move into a new kind of organization, you cannot fight a war. Similarly, India is also moving towards theater command. Okay? And that is the time we will be most vulnerable. As China was vulnerable, we will also be very, very vulnerable. We have to be very, very careful when we move into theater commands. We have to get our act together. We have to get the synergy together, because those forces will not be ready to work together, or the synergy will not be there. That is the time we will be most vulnerable. So if you notice, China utilized their navy against US Navy. They engaged their army with best army in the world, you can say, the Indian Army. What were they doing? They were preparing and checking the readiness of their forces and the synergy of their forces, how they work together. Will be able to take on these adversaries. If China opens the front against Taiwan, they will be opening 7 fronts. It will not be just one front. Taiwan will go into which is something called hedgehog strategy. Okay, there will be a complete defensive strategy. They will, fortify. They are already fortified. Okay, it's not very easy to overcome Taiwan. The sea is rough, and as well as their terrain is not hospitable. The beaches are not very, very conducive for their marines to land there. And China has got 25,000 marines only. They still heavily depend on their infantry to do the landings. So it is not that easy. And once Taiwan goes into the hedgehog strategy, they will buy time. They will buy time for US to come in. They will buy time for Quad to move in and help them out. That is the time China would be opening 7 fronts. They cannot sustain that. They cannot sustain. China holds only 60 days of fuel. Okay, so they will not be able to sustain that. On the other side, on the flip side, India does not have those kind of constraints. Indian fuel flows freely. We don't have any of the choke points. We are developing 2 new submarine bases, one in Karwar and one in Kakinad, which is going to be undersea base.
Yes.
Okay. And so we are getting ready very, very quickly. Only thing which I told you again lagged and we need is the speed. We have to develop, we have to pull up our socks, we have to push our dockyards, have to be up and about, and you will see we will do wonders. And believe you me, we are the leader in the Quad today. We are not just one part of the whole puzzle, but we are the whole puzzle. That is why you will see USA coming with us. They are providing us technology. We are having, we have already done BECA with them. And so various large changes are taking place in the whole setup and the relationship with many, many countries as well as the organizations.
It's interesting, sir. I must say the whole aspect that you spoke about, that it is going to get heated up. They are preparing for something in Taiwan, although ill-prepared or ill-equipped to do so. As you mentioned about their dependence on the infantry to actually launch a marine attack on Taiwan. One thing begs to mind is, it always begs to mind that why do the Chinese do what they do? And you have actually put it across in a way that what you're saying essentially is that the Chinese need to keep their military occupied. Otherwise, in simple words, they'll start thinking and pushing the leadership back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, if you noticed, off late, Xi Jinping has been very, very nervous. He's not himself. Okay. What is the reason? He feels that he is running out of time. He feels that he has to go one notch above Mao. He has to show the country that he is bigger leader than Mao. Okay, he has forgotten Deng's principle of bide your time. That was the Deng's principle. So he's not ready to do that. He wants his country to overtake USA. They had plan of something called 100 years of marathon. That was by 2049 they wanted to overtake USA. But now he's getting uneasy and he wants to overtake USA by 2030. Now, yes, maybe economically you can overtake USA by 2030, but China does not know what is called soft power. Their soft power is worse than even Indian soft power. India has phenomenal soft power. They work on something, a principle called sharp power. Okay, and sharp power does not work. Sharp power can work within your own country. Okay, Sun Tzu's principles can work, maybe they will work within the local politics, but they don't work in geopolitics. That is the biggest mistake China makes every time. They think that other countries are fool and they will make those tricks and they will listen. I'm sorry to say, Europe has been up to a certain extent fooled by China. And they are making same mistake what they made with Germany in 43 and 44. They are making same mistake, and they are unnecessarily showing Russia as their enemy, whereas China is the real enemy. I interact with a lot of Westerners, and they say that why do you say China is enemy? Our government says that Russia is enemy. So I start laughing, and then I explain to them, and they start thinking. They agree. They said yes. China has been stealthily operating, whereas USA, they lost their way after 1990. They should have grabbed the opportunity USSR had collapsed, they should have taken the new Russia in their fold, and Russia would have come very, very readily. Yeltsin, he was a good friend of Clinton. They had a good equation. They would have gone ahead and maybe not NATO, but they would have taken them in their fold. But rather than that, they made Russia as a villain, and we stand here. Second opportunity we lost in 2001, when Bush went whole head with his attack on terrorism. That should have been just one instance and not a strategy for next 10 years. They just kept doing that. They got involved in unnecessary wars. That gave a chance to China to grow, to go unnoticed. Okay, and they did it very smartly. They fooled the world, and here we stand today.
Very interesting. So I must say this is a very different aspect and different way of looking at the entire situation, and where the world is making the same mistakes again what we made in the pretty much the last century. So I guess history is repeating itself.
Yeah. So as they say, history repeats. So we are on the doorstep of repeating the history. But remember, there's a very great saying which says that who commands the sea commands the trade, and who commands the trade commands the wealth, and who commands the wealth is the empire in the future. So empires are not made by some very conscious effort. Okay, a butterfly fluttering in the Pacific, the waves it creates can have a cyclonic storm in Bay of Bengal. Because so many aspects, so many permutation combinations, so many forces join it, and it becomes a cyclonic storm. Similarly, an empire cannot be made by a design. It comes through various aspects, so various sources, various energies and synergies. So Xi Jinping, if he's thinking that he's going to create an empire, he cannot. It is beyond him. He should realize that, else he's making a big mistake.
On that note, sir, I'd like to thank you for joining me this evening and sharing your actually one very, very different and wonderful insights. It's a pleasure talking to you. I've read, quite a bit of your blogs. I actually like to read about, especially military opinion, because those are the people who actually know what's happening. The rest is just good reading material. But if you want to learn something, I believe it comes from the military minds, because they have seen these things, they have been in the force, they know the ground reality of situations. So thank you so much for joining me, sir. And I would be honored if once again we could join sometime and discuss geopolitics, as if I may take the word from your blog itself.
Thank you so much, Adi. It was a pleasure being with you and speaking to you. And I hope this video comes out so the people also. There are so many wonderful people, as you said, from the armed forces and other walks of life who are very, very experienced, and their wisdom will see this country through. And that is why after so many years of hardship, 1,000 years of slavery, we are still strong and standing, and one of the mightiest forces in the world. Thank you so much, Adi.
Thank you, sir. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.